Well, good evening. It's good to have each of you here on this wonderful Wednesday night. So glad to have you as a part of our worship tonight. So every once in a while, for all of our Facebook friends out there, our social media, I've been told, don't just say Facebook because we put it on a lot of platforms. So I know that I'm running into a little bit. I get excited sometimes about what we're talking about, which I guess isn't a problem. But I noticed that these times that I'm having, and y'all have been very nice. Nobody's got up and ran out on me, but we've had some longer Wednesday nights. And so I'm going to try to be respectful, and I get yelled at for being time conscious, but I also know that everybody's attention span is what it is. So I'm going to make a deal with you. If the Lord leads, I'm going to cut it off when I need to cut it off. And if He keeps telling me to go on, y'all just be polite when you leave, okay? One of the two. But this is a very, very important matter. It's one of the topics that I've had a propensity to speak on because it matters a lot to me. Growing up in a single parent household, seeing a different dynamic from a lot of people around me, and then as I was growing myself and watching what was happening in other people's households, and in learning in student ministry and pastoral ministry, the struggles of a lot of households, I've just come to the conclusion that it's okay to preach on family and teach on family and talk about family and encourage people to understand the gravity that is family. So all I can say it is this: you realize that when families divide and families disintegrate, so goes the church. You understand how that works, right? I hope you do. You say, well, no, God's always got people out there. I didn't deny the fact that God can grow a church. But what we are is not, we are one large family as brothers and sisters in Christ, but we are also multiple families. And we know that by our last names and our genealogies and such. But when these fall apart, it really does a detriment to the work of the New Testament church. And that's why I believe that we're seeing so many attacks. We don't even know what a family is anymore. We don't know what gender is what anymore. I mean, I could do this, but I need to stick to this. Family is critical to the work of Jesus Christ. Again, Genesis, what is he worried about? Well, Adam's alone. Let's let him have a family. So apparently Adam, you and I may think we're better, but we're not. Adam needed family. We need family. We need church family, but more importantly, we need family. And so I got very convicted studying this. So true story, you're going to find out we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, and we're going to be in 2 Samuel 15 because where I was going to be tonight in 2 Samuel 12 and 27 was too good to just do for what I know we have on Wednesday night. So I want to encourage you, make sure you're here Sunday morning. If you're not here Sunday morning, tune in, because that one is a good one. And I just felt like this right here, even though I'm jumping ahead a little bit, really needed to be more of a Sunday morning message. I felt like there was a lot of people that really, not that this is unimportant, but this I can do a little bit more on a one-to-one with you all like I like to on Wednesday night. By the way, if you don't know this already, I'm going to quit rambling. Let me check my sugar's fine. It's not that. I like Wednesday nights. I really like Wednesday nights. You know why I like Wednesday nights? Because I don't teach classes, so this is like a teach-preach kind of thing. And I get to get up with you guys, and y'all still look at me, and we feedback every once in a while. Carl gives me a look every once in a while, but hey, I'm not doing you like Jacob did the other night, so you're safe, okay? So let's have some fun tonight as we dig into the Word, okay? I just want you to stand for the reading of one verse tonight, and then we're going to dive into this a little deeper. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the end of the story and back up, okay? And if I get done, we get done. If not, we'll come back and pick it back up where we left off towards next week. So 2 Samuel 15 and 30. This is a very sad picture of a man who should have never been in this position. But this is what happens when family becomes of less importance. It's not protected. It's not defended. And David went up by the ascent of Mount Olivet and wept as he went up and had his head covered. He doesn't look like a king, y'all. And he went barefoot. Kings would never walk barefoot. And all the people that was with him covered every man his head, and they went up weeping as they went up. You can be seated. So I want to share a story with you about two paddle boats that were going down Mississippi, from Memphis, heading towards New Orleans. And supposedly, as the story goes, these guys are on the paddle boats, and one person on one paddle boat talks a little bit of smack to the other guy, and y'all are slow, y'all ain't got nothing like we got, and they start having this little jihad back and forth a little bit, and telling whose boat's faster, and y'all are way too slow, and so challenges were made, the race is on, and next thing you know, one boat starts falling behind. So they're realizing they don't have enough fuel, maybe they're a little heavy, whatever the case, as far as their cargo compared to the other boat. They figured they had plenty of coal for the trip, but not to do a race. Nobody planned on this, but now it's on. So as the boat drops back, you have an ingenuitive kind of sailor on board, a young man that says, I got an idea, and he starts taking some cargo and throwing it in the fire. Next thing you know, whoosh, whoosh, and we got a little bit of more steam going, and we got a little more energy going, and now this boat's starting to pick up. And so the other guys see it, and they're like, hey, that's a good idea. And they start grabbing some more, and they start fueling it up. And they end up winning the race, but they burned up their cargo. Translation, God has entrusted us with cargo, children, spouses. And our job is to do our part in seeing that our cargo reaches its destination. They didn't do a very good job of it. What I'm saying in so many words is you can do everything you can to win the race, but at what cost? At what end does it lead to? And so I'm going to tell you that a lot of times what we define as success and winning the race at the expense of our families is going to cost us dearly when we stand before the Lord Jesus Christ. He entrusted us with something very special. And as a husband, I know what I told my in-laws when I asked their consent to marry their daughter. And I know what I did when I stood in a church similar to this, walking an aisle and looking eyeball to eyeball with my bride and making these commitments under the name of Jesus Christ. Does those things still matter? This is very critical. And of course, the devil knows this, and he loves to get in because he knows there's a lot at stake. And we see a poor man that should have had it in so much better shape. I want to tell you something. Just because he was a man after God's own heart, we can understand by now that David was far from perfect. David struggled immensely. And you see the after effects of that in his life in verse 30. I want to back up to 2 Samuel chapter 13. We're going to come back to this chapter 15. And what I'm going to do, if I have the time, and if not, we'll make the time next week, is I want to just give you a survey of chapters 13, 14, and 15. So this isn't something I can probably do efficiently, so I'm going to encourage each of you to read this at your time, okay? And so I want you to see, first and foremost, we're talking tonight about defending the family. An intruder comes into the house. I'm sure many of you have necessary means of protection to defend your family. You will secure your home. You will do everything you can to make sure nothing happens to your children, your grandchildren, your spouses, what have you. And that's the way it should be when it comes to our family today. Oh, to God, if every one of us would take this to heart as we venture into circumstances, situations, much like David encountered, where you have choices to make, and we consider the Word of God, which David did not have, that thankfully we do, to arm ourselves, as we've talked about spiritual warfare. 2 Samuel 13, we see a sad story, and this for context purposes. You see the daughter of David. No doubt she was an attractive young woman named Tamar. And so Tamar is there, and so she is daily in front of her stepbrother Amnon. Amnon has a ungodly lust for this young lady to the point where we come to verse 12. And he has forced her into a very difficult situation. And she says in verse 12, and she answered him, nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not this folly. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. She's speaking and trying to help him reason with, he's got this unbridled lust after her, and he's not listening. But she says, now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. This goes back to Deuteronomy and some context that was given if a person would desire an individual, they can go and negotiate, even though it's family. This is not as big of a deal in Hebrew culture as it would be today. Howbeit, he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than he or she, he forced her and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly. This is an ungodly picture of what lust does. The moment you have there's this exhilaration, and I know we're looking at this in sexual context, but it's in every context. I've got to have this. No, why'd I do this? And I don't want it at all. And it's this conquest that means nothing now, and it's ridiculous. And this is what sin does. It deludes our minds. I'm trying not to preach too many messages tonight, but this is one I've sat across a desk many a time with conversation that I wish we could have had beforehand rather than after. But we see here that he now hates her, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love, and really that's the word lust, wherewith he had lusted after or loved her. And Amnon said unto her, arise, be gone. What a jerk. That's the Wednesday night version that I can give you, but he's a horrible, despicable person for what he's done. And she said unto him, there is no cause. This evil is sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. So basically, if you understand Hebrew culture, no man would marry a woman that's not a virgin now. She's very disregarded, and women had a much different role in Hebrew times than they do today. It's not to be negative or show any light or disregard for the role of women. You have great worth in God's eyes, but in Hebrew culture, there was a much different standard, and now she was worthless. Even though she's the king's daughter, it would be much more difficult for her to ever marry. But he would not hearken unto her. It's a sad commentary. But what gets me in reading this is you're thinking to yourself, you're the dad in this situation. You're David. What do? You hear about this happened under your property, and David, he's the king. You think he gets word, gets back to him. What's David's response? I didn't have girls. I got 2, fixing to have 3 granddaughters. I know what y'all's response would be after I did what I respond. Y'all have to make a motion to accept my resignation because I'm probably incarcerated, okay? I'm not trying to be unspiritual. I'm just trying to be honest. It's going to be very difficult for me to ever hear about something like this and not do something really ungodly to somebody. And I don't know how David, even though he was his own son, as the protector of his family, the king of Israel, yes, but the protector of his family. What's the reaction, David? What are you going to do? Well, verse 21 tells us. Tamar, however you say, basically is taken back to Absalom's house. David has not done or said anything at this point, and then we come to David. It's like the camera spans the room, and there we find David. David, what's your response? It's almost like if we were doing the interview. David, how do you feel about this? Can you give us an answer? But when all we have on this commentary of this moment, of this magnitude, is when King David heard of all of these things, he was very wroth. End of story. He's just angry. No banishment. No, I'm getting my sword. I'm getting my sling. I'm throwing him somewhere. He's moving out. He's going to die. He's going to be stoned. Nothing is said. There's no action. It's just personal feeling. See, the thing we're talking about tonight, first and foremost, is the family needs an advocate. The family needs an advocate. God has entrusted Pete to be the advocate for my family, to impart the word of God, the things of God, to defend my family, to live the life in front of my boys, to live the life now in front of my grandgirls and my daughter-in-laws, and of course my wife, as we've come together and grown in our Christian love, and do the best I can. Well, before it comes to Landmark, it better start in the Underwood home. Boy, if everybody would purpose this, and don't get me wrong, because that sounds good on paper, but it doesn't always translate very well. Some of y'all know what it's like to still have the kiddos in the house. I had 3 little precious Owen children, I think almost all at one time, piggybacking for a while there, Dylan. I could see why it might not always work in your home either. But you know what? Kids are kids. I love our kids. I love the Landmark kids. We got some great kids, and we have some fun on Wednesday nights and when I can get around them. But I'm going to tell you something. This is not easy. You really got to want to do this for God's sake. Because if God said it's important, then it probably is. It's not a question. And oftentimes, I'm thinking, where's the advocate here in David's situation? The brother intervenes more than the father. If something happened to one of my boys and they heard more from their brother than they even did their dad, that wouldn't be a very good statement on where's Pete at it now? Why is Kyle or Cameron, or whichever way you want to go with that, doing this but the other isn't? That's a scary proposition. But one of the other things that troubles me when we read this is where do we read of the care and comfort for Tamar? What about Tamar's mother, Maacah? We don't read anything here. For Absalom and the rest of the resentment the brothers must have been feeling for this, no doubt towards their brother Amnon, and they're stepbrothers in this, but it doesn't change anything in the family dynamic. The problem is you can search this. You can jump to a different translation if you want to, and I'm going to tell you, you're not going to see any editorial on this. This is a horrible job of parenting. It's a horrible job of husbandry. His wife has got to be devastated, but there's no picture of comfort. His daughter is broken. She doesn't want to be seen. She's so embarrassed and humiliated. And where's Dad? He's just too busy being mad, and he doesn't do anything else about it. David does nothing to Amnon, and he does absolutely nothing for Tamar. That's 0 for 2 in my book. Advocacy is critical. But because he did not advocate in this moment, I'm going to tell you, it'll snowball. Understand this. When you and I take a back seat and we say, I don't really want to deal with my family right now, and I'm not saying that his kingly duties weren't going on. I'm not saying that things were not still troublesome in his life in certain ways. But we can't take a pass when life happens that needs to be addressed. Because first and foremost, again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. More than my devotion to my wife, more than my responsibilities to my kids, is my place with God in the family. And by the way, women, don't take this as we're talking about husbands and men. This is every role, because your role is important. Otherwise, Ephesians 5, we'd only talk about the men and not the women. Every person in the role of the family, Ephesians 5, and then goes over to Ephesians 6. We'll get to Ephesians 6 either tonight or next week. Has a very important place. And I don't know what has crept into our society, into our minds. We're in a role right now. I'm not going to corner our teachers that are here, but I know from years ago of substituting in schools at different times, this ridiculous substitute parenting thing that we do, and we think it's more the teacher's job to parent our kids than the parent's job. It's not what the Bible teaches. I also know it from a church perspective, and excuse me if I'm saying anything out of turn, but I'm not going to apologize for this one. There is a mindset oftentimes that here's my kids, you do with them, don't ask me to take any personal responsibility though. Their Christian welfare is in your hands, not mine. The greatest Sunday school is always the Christian home. It should not be the New Testament church. We come alongside and supplement, but the home is still the home. And it's a travesty where we are. Because this didn't have an advocate, the next became a problem. I'm convinced that if this had happened the way it should have in the first part, this never would have happened between Amnon and Absalom. So we drop down to 2 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 22. Amnon is doing what he's done and he's getting away with it. Absalom takes note of it. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon. Why? Because he had forced his sister Tamar. Where's the intervention? Hey, I know you guys are upset right now. Let's talk it out and let's have a conversation. I'm going to take care of action. David had every right to do what he could have, but he did nothing. So he left it to the emotions of the kids to sort it all out. We say, well, they're adults. It doesn't always work well, whether you're adults or kids. Dad can still be dad. I was visiting with Mr. Jimmy Cox today, and he's not doing too well, and Thomas walked in, and I reminded Thomas, and see Daddy laying in that bed there? I said, he may not feel the energy, but that's okay. I'll help him. I said, he's still dad, because Thomas was doing what Thomas does, and Jimmy was giving it back to him, and they were kind of going back and forth. And we had a little chuckle about it, and I said, now listen, Mr. Jimmy, you're still dad. And that doesn't stop just because he moves out of the house. Dad's still dad. Mom's still mom. When we see that about honoring your parents, that's a lifelong. That's not just when you get done with being 18, you can do what you want. Read the context, you'll see what it says. Amnon and Absalom, though, here, there's a problem, a big problem. David is absent. He does nothing to address the problem. And what's interesting is you drop down to verse 23, and it came to pass after 2 full years. Nothing has been done in his 2 years. That's a long time to just say, hey, let's have Thanksgiving. Everybody ready? Ain't nobody coming to Thanksgiving, guys. Amnon definitely isn't. Absalom don't want to be a part. Tamar's still hiding out. This table that used to be a beautiful picture of family is long shot because of the silence. You say, well, they shouldn't have done things. I understand that. But there's got to be accountability. So Absalom takes action into his own hands. Verse 28 and 29, if you read there, you find that basically he holds a party. He gets dad's permission. Dad's so oblivious to the fact he can't see the trap that's being set. He says, why do you want Amnon, if you read the context there? And they're talking it out, and David's like, oh, you want Amnon? And foolish David's maybe thinking, well, Absalom's over it, and they want to just mend ways, and they want to have a big dinner feast and everything else. And so they go have this, and what he does is Absalom tells his henchmen, look, we're going to get this joker drunk, and I'm going to kill him, and you're going to help me. And don't worry, I'll take the blame for it, but he's going down. And that's exactly what happens. The brothers see it. They don't know if he's after the rest of them or not, and they all run. So now we have total confusion in the family. We don't know if Absalom's lost his mind, if he's really after the rest of them, or he's just after Amnon because he's mad. But they all run away. David hears a false story. He thinks all the brothers are dead. He gets a false report. You find out later on that it isn't true. And then you see where they're coming on the scene, and here they come. And I want you to see this, because what this image is in verse 35 through 37. So the murder occurs, and Jonadab said unto the king, verse 35, behold, the king's son come, as thy servant said, so it is. And it came to pass as soon, I want you to watch what's going on here. As soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came and lifted up their voice and wept. They're crying. It's an emotional train wreck. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. So they're all crying. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son. So he goes to his grandpa's house, basically, on his mom's side. And David mourned for his son every day. David's probably living with some regrets. He's crying. They're crying. David's still crying. And if you go down a little bit further, you find that he's missing his kids. Verse 39 says, or verse 38 says that Absalom stayed there 3 years. So he hadn't talked to his kid for 2 years. Now he's gone 3 more years. And then the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. Long story short, now he's missing Absalom, but he's not doing anything about it. David's unraveling, y'all, as this guy that we thought he was. Because he may be a great king. He may be a great warrior. He may be one of the best shepherds. He may be one of the best harpists you've ever seen. But he's a train wreck of a dad and of a husband. I mean, where's the advocacy? I don't know every one of you extremely well. I'm getting to know each and every one of you. But I'd like to think none of y'all are doing what David's doing here. Sit back, be a pacifist, it'll be all right. Now, it'll take care of itself. I'm not saying you go out there and you go kill people and play vigilante, okay? I was being real about my emotions a minute ago, but I'm not telling you that's the answer we should give. What I'm saying, though, is you got to do more than just get mad. What are we teaching the kids? What are we teaching those around us by just saying it's okay? David had authority. He could act on these things. He didn't need to speak to a judge or a jury. So meanwhile, I want you to think about this. The brothers are scared. They don't know what's going on with Absalom. What do you think Absalom's thinking during all this? You think David's cool with him? He doesn't know because he doesn't ever hear from David. David doesn't try to find him, pursue him. He probably gets a lead of where he's at. We know eventually Joab, the captain of the army, knows where he is. Joab's watching the king suffer. That's where it leads us into chapter 14. So because David doesn't take the initiative, no, Joab has to step in. Dad's taking a vacay still. He's up on Valium or whatever he's doing to just kind of deal with the pain. So Joab intervenes, and he brings in a woman that is a pretty wise woman, they said. And if you read chapter 14, you find basically she uses a story to try to paint a picture of why are you acting the way you're acting. And he figures it out, and he says, oh, so Joab put you up to this, I'm assuming. And he realizes, and then he says, yeah, Joab, you're right. I'm tired of being miserable. It's been too long. All right, we're making some progress. You go get him. Dave, you're not going to go show any initiative? Can we fast forward to the New Testament when we see the picture of Jesus? Remember the prodigal son? Y'all remember the story of the prodigal son, right? On the hill. Son's left. Do y'all get the picture that dad doesn't think about the son anymore? He just happened to be busy out in the field and the kid just starts walking up? No. You know the story. What does dad do? He sees him, and what's he do? Does he wait till he gets to the front yard and then he opens the gate for him? Maybe. No, he runs to him. Different picture entirely. David, on the other hand, he didn't get the memo. And what is a strong obstacle that the devil will use, and men, this is us. Don't try to negotiate with me. So, and if you negotiate with me, then you're already proving my point, okay? Some of y'all go say, that's not me. I'm going to say, see, this is why I'm saying it's you. Watch this. In chapter 14, verse 24, he comes back. Absalom comes. In verse 24, and the king said, let him turn to his own house and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. So you can come back from grandpa's house, but I better never catch you. I don't want to be around you. Can I tell you what that's called? Stubbornness. Men, y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't lie. And if you don't, then get on the altar and then get it checked. Women, you can be stubborn too. Now, you don't get a free pass, but we men folk can be stubborn. You know how I know? My wife tells me every once in a while. Y'all don't have wives like that, I know. I can be stubborn. I know I'm right. No, you're not right, Pete. Yes, I am. You're being stubborn. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. See what I mean? See, this is how it works in my house. And half the time or more, she's right. But you know, this is the sad part. I want to fast forward to chapter 18. We're going a little bit further down the line from where we are. They've got this lost time, this miserable relationship. I mean, David and Absalom are not having Christmas together. They don't even want to see. Absalom's wanting dad's attention, and dad won't give him any. He doesn't know where he stands. And once you see chapter 18 and verse 33. Justin, you got that? Chapter 18, 2 Samuel, verse 33. Would you read it for me, please? Absalom's dead. Got killed. I preached messages about having long hair back in the day. I don't care what you do with your hair. Some people do some crazy stuff. But he got his hair caught up in a tree, and old Joab came along and did some dart practice and killed him for what he'd done. Tried to take over the king's throne. Did a good job for a while. That's where we find David in our original text when he's leaving. Because he wasn't the advocate, he had to advocate his own throne. Isn't that horrible? His place wasn't in the family, right? So how's he going to be able to do his job right? Son comes after him. This family's a wreck, y'all. And then Absalom dies. And in that moment, he has to live with all this guilt of what I could have done and should have done, but I never did, because stubbornness is what causes us to face those regrets day in and day out. If I'd only done better. I took this message to heart, y'all. There's a lot of regrets that I personally have, and it's not that anything gross. The times I was too busy to spend a little extra time with my mom on the phone. I'm a very defensive person about parental. I don't have a dad, never knew a dad, and my mom was gold. I talk funny about her sometimes when I'm preaching, but that was my mom. And you got one mom, you better protect her and honor her. And Mama did right by me. She raised me in the Lord. She loved me even when I didn't deserve it, acting like a kid does, teenage boy, whatever, and she disciplined me enough to love me. And I watch, and I'm so thankful. But yet I look back in those moments that I could have made a trip, but I was too in love with my work and church life that I didn't make the trip when I could have gone to Florida. My grandfather passed away a few years ago, and if it hadn't been for my wife's intervention, I would have never seen him before he died. Why? Just in love with my work to a point where I can't even make time for family. And Lisa surprised me one Christmas and said, Pete, I bought tickets. She got this big old box Sunday morning. We were getting ready for church that morning, and she got me out of bed at 3 o'clock. You think she was the one opening the present. I want you to open this. And I thought it was one of the boys' gifts. I didn't know. She said, no, that's the one of yours. We've seen it there for a couple weeks. I opened it up, and she's got a folder in there. It's a trip to Massachusetts to go see and little did I know, 3 months later, my grandfather, he wasn't well, and I figured it was going to be the last time. I spent a best week with him. Got to hear all the stories, took him to favorite eating places, talked sport. He loved to talk sports. He talked to me about the Lord and church, talked to me always about my family, played cribbage. Some of you guys that are in the South, you don't know what cribbage is. It's a fun little game, and we'd play these cribbage games. Watch some football with him. I just reflect on that. Tebow's big win with the Broncos in the playoffs. I got to see that with him, and that was special to me. And I enjoyed that. Couldn't get him to go to sleep that night. We were all tired, and he was just, for a man his age. But I'm going to tell you this. If Lisa doesn't intervene, I don't see my grandfather. I'm so thankful that she got this stubborn kid Pete, it's going to be all right. The church will be all right for a week. Go. And I did. Sometimes we get so prioritized on what we see as most important. David's kingdom. David's this, David's that what's happening right underneath his nose, he's oblivious to. He didn't protect the family. And his family blew up in his face. My ministry, typically, and I don't apologize, and I am glad to come alongside anybody that I can help. But the amount of hours between marital conflict and parents and kids sometimes, I don't have that one as much, but the marital conflict, I have a lot of, it seems, in ministry. And I tell people, first of all, I'm not a certified counselor. I can just tell you what the Bible says. You may like it, you may not, whatever. But I will do everything I can. I'm counseling with a couple right now when I go back in February to Bogalusa to do what I believe is going to be my last wedding there, for Brett and Rachel. I started counseling with them the week before. We're just doing FaceTime. I'm trying to get them ahead of the game so they don't fall behind. And so they know these basic principles to marriage and relationships. Try to give them to go to the retreat. If y'all haven't been in this retreat, every church I go to, I say, go to this retreat, go to this retreat. Everybody says, I'm okay. But we make times to go all these other places. You ought to go. Ask Sam and Justin, and they'll tell you all about the benefits of it, and some of the others that have gone recently. It's a blessing. It'll maybe be a game changer for you if you let it. I didn't preach all that to say this. I'm not going to get to point 2 and 3 tonight. We're going to save it. I don't want to rush this. I said all that to say this. We talk big game about people needing to get saved, and they do. We talk big game about the matters of this and building our church and building our, reaching our community and doing all these things that matter, and they do. But at what cost if it's going to tear up the family? At what cost do we run ourselves to death for the success of our finances and having a boat and having trips and having a nicer whatever at the expense of compromising our families. That's why I tell you, go be with your family. Go be with your family. I'm going to see my grandbaby born. I know none of y'all are upset about that. You're going to say, go. I'm not going to get to see her when she first gets here, but I'm going to see my grandbaby born. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to see my boy. I haven't seen him. It's the longest it's been, and I can't tell you, maybe ever. I haven't sat down and done the math the last time I've seen Kyle. I know we hadn't seen each other since I moved. Well, one time. I went back in March for that wedding. Saw him for a day or two. That's tough when you're away. I think about these missionaries across the world. I'm so thankful for FaceTimes and things we can do. I'm not trying to get sappy with you. I'm just trying to be biblical. We don't need any more Davids in our world. We need some people that'll take a stand for their family, defend the family. You say, well, I don't have this or I don't have that. I may not be married or I don't have. Look, you know what you can do? You can encourage others. You can pray for others. You can come alongside them. You can listen to them. That's why I want to open up our altar tonight and give you a time of decision tonight. Pray for your family. Pray that you'll take the role, whatever role that is that God's put you in, to protect your family. Honor God. Don't be so daggone stubborn, and just do what he says. That's why let's have this time of decision. And we're going to let you make whatever choices you need to make. I can't make it for you. We serve a big God, y'all. He loves your kids. He loves your grandkids. He loves you. He loves David. He loved his family. But he also leaves us to make the decisions. And a lot of people right now, maybe not here at Landmark, but you don't have to go far outside of our community, are just self-destructing, chasing some dream that's been taught to them through worldly standards and nothing to do with Christian. And we're blowing up our families in the name of whatever suits us, defines us. There's a lot of things I'd like to editorialize on this, but I think I'm going to leave it to what the Bible says, and thus saith the Lord. But I can tell you, the tread marks and the tire marks that I've seen that pursue this line that David took, there's way too many going that direction and not enough going the way of the Lord. Let's make a difference in our community. Let's make a difference in our families. Maybe that starts tonight. Let's stand. Brother Austin, what number or what song?
Just as I am, 488.
The altar is open.